Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chad Thomas II. I'm a senior IT student here at North Carolina A&T, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about how to build a LAMP server. So let's get right into it. So what is a LAMP server specifically, right? Let's actually backtrack a little bit. Let's just talk about what exactly a web server is first. So you can think about it like this. I know people will say, jump around all these technical words and things might, kind of get confusing here, but I'm going to try and break down everything as clearly as possible in this video. So you can think of a server as just a computer, right? That when you go to a specific location on the computer in the network, right? It could be like it's public file that you're able to access through the internet, right? All it does is it serves you up something. Specifically, it could be pictures, it could be videos, it could be files, text files, whatever. That's what a server is. When I probably say the word server, you probably think more along the lines of those big, machines, those towers with, all these racks on it, a bunch of lights flashing everywhere, right? You probably think of it more like that. But down to the nitty gritty, it's basically just a computer that serves up something when you visit a place in this file structure through the internet, right? So specifically, if we talk about these bigger servers over here, these are probably like more of a production environment. Like you've got a huge application that you're working on. It needs a lot of computing and processing power, and it needs to run multiple things at once, right? You might have to use these huge big servers over here for it. But something like we're doing, right, like mobile testing and all that and stuff, we can use our computer as our web server. So that's all it is a computer that when you ask it for something, it gives you something back, right? So if we're talking about web servers, right, web servers specifically serve up content that has to do with websites and web pages, right? So those are common things like HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript files, PHP files, Python files, all this stuff, images, stuff associated with the web, right? So I'm going to give you a scenario, right? Let's say, let's talk about what happens when we go to something like Yahoo.com or Google.com. Google.com, right? What's happening is your computer, right, is going to this domain, right? Google's computer, Google's special computer, but they got these huge servers, right? Because they're on this production scale company, they gotta, serve a bunch of people at once, right? They've got these huge servers, and when you go to Google.com, you're asking the server to give you back the information associated with Google.com. So the index.html file that's associated with Google.com, CSS file that's associated with Google.com, it gives you all that back and displays it on your computer through the web browser. So let's say we have Chrome, right? It gives it back all this information. And in the web browser, like Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, I don't know how you use Internet Explorer, but all those things are web browsers, and it interprets all this stuff that Google is sending back, right? So that's kind of just with the basics of how the web server works, right? So getting further into it, let's talk about what exactly we'll be building today. So we'll be building a web server, right? But this is a LAMP stack server. So this is an acronym. So each of the letters breaks into something different, and I'll kind of explain each of them, right? So the L stands for Linux. The A stands for Apache. The M stands for MySQL, and the P stands for PHP. So what these all are technologies on the web server. So we'll kind of go through each of them individually, right? So the first thing is Linux. So Linux is an operating system, and Linux is actually used for like the majority of all web servers that are out there. You'll probably find Linux on it. But Linux is the operating system, right, that we're going to be using to work this web server, right? Like they got different operating systems out there, like Windows and Mac OS and stuff like that. But all the stuff that we'll be doing is through the Linux shell specifically. We'll be using the GUI for this one. But the next thing in the acronym is Apache. So Apache is the actual web server. This is what controls what happens when I go to google.com and it gives me back all that stuff, right? Apache is the actual web, the software on the computer that is routing traffic, and when somebody comes in and asks for something, it gives it back. It's the software that's doing all of that. MySQL is a database management system. So, say we're building an application out, right, and we find that it needs a little bit more than just a front end, right? I mean, it has to have a back end, it has to have some server or database stuff associated with it. MySQL would take the place of that, right? It would be our database management system. It would create, read, update, and delete all of the data that we would need it to store or to add or whatever. It's our database management system that we would be using in this step. And the last thing is PHP, which is just our object-oriented programming language, right? And PHP is the backend language that we can use to kind of do different things, like communicate with the server and do a lot of cool different things with the web pages. It adds a lot of functionality there on the back end. Now, with the LAMP stack specifically, some people will actually consider the P something else. Like sometimes the P can stand for Python, right? And it's just another object-oriented language like PHP that can run on the server. Or I think Perl is another one. But you don't see that as often. But the most common one that people use is actually PHP, and that's the one that we'll be using. So that's what a LAMP stack is. Now there are other like technology stacks. That's what this is. That's what exactly what this is. It's a technology stack that we're using to build software, like the Mean stack, which is another technology stack that has to do with like JavaScript on the front end and back end. We need to worry about that. But if you're interested in that, you can kind of research that a little bit. But that's what a LAMP stack is. So what we'll be doing exactly is we're going to be going through and spinning up a virtual machine and actually making this. So how exactly do we kind of accomplish this, right? So the first thing you'll need is an actual server, right, or to do all this stuff on a Linux server. I'm sure you don't have like a rack sitting at home that you can just go ahead and use and everything like that. So, one of the cool things that you can do is you can use a regular laptop, and you can get one of these bundles like XAMPP or LAMP, right? And it'll have all that stuff built in. You can just kind of start and stop it. But we're going to kind of get a little more advanced into that. And we're going to put everything on the server individually so you can kind of see how it works in Linux, and we'll be doing some cool stuff in the command line. So the first thing that we would need is a place to obviously, do all the Linux stuff, right? So we'll have to get a Linux virtual machine. Now you can do this through a number of different ways, right? So the first one is probably VirtualBox, and you can get a VirtualBox, download the software, get a version of Linux, and kind of install everything that way. Another way is through cloud VM, so like something like AWS or Google Cloud. That's another way of doing it. And then also, you can actually install the server version of a Linux onto your laptop and actually do it that way, which is like a direct install. But that's a little harder, right? But what we'll be kind of doing, right, is, and probably I find the easiest way to do it and to learn as well is to do it in a cloud hosting platform like Google Cloud or AWS. So we'll be using Google Cloud specifically for this, right? So what exactly we'll be doing, right? So we'll be getting onto Google Cloud, and then we'll make a new computer, right, and install Linux on it. So the flavor of Linux that we're actually going to be using for this is Ubuntu. So install Linux Ubuntu, and all Ubuntu is just a Linux distribution. So there's all these types of different Linux distributions, and for learning and stuff like that, Ubuntu is definitely the easiest one. But that's the first thing we'll do, right? So the second thing we'll do is once everything's up and running, we'll make sure it can accept HTTP traffic and all that, right? The next thing we'll do is install Apache, and in Apache we can go ahead and add and edit the HTML files that are in there, and it'll run like a web server, right? Third thing we'll do is install PHP, and we'll write a simple PHP program that can print out something onto the web browser and everything like that. And then the fourth thing that we'll do is install MySQL. And with MySQL, like I said, it's a database management system, and we can kind of just on the server in the command line mess with it a little bit, but I won't go too much into working with PHP and MySQL together. But that's some really cool stuff. And then in addition to that, which is kind of a nice thing to have, is what's called it's a GUI for MySQL, so you can kind of visualize your databases and the tables you have. But it's called PHPMyAdmin, and PHPMyAdmin is just it's a graphical user interface for your current installation of your database management system, which in this case is MySQL. So that just gives you a little overview of what we'll be doing, and then just the different technologies that we'll be using, and what exactly a web server is and how it works. So that's it.